On today's edition of Cronkite Sports Live, will Arizona State football prove critics wrong this season? Can ASU soccer player earn her place in the record book? Does ASU volleyball have its most complete team in recent history? Stick around and find out on the newest season of Cronkite Sports Live.
Are you back already? Thanks so much for joining us once again here in Studio 6 for another edition of Cronkite Sports Live. Sammy, ASU football kicked off the 2022-23 season last night against NAU, and there's a handful of new players on this team.
Yeah, Ethan, for more than 40 players, last night was the first time they put on an ASU uniform and played at Sun Devil Stadium. And as Emery Jones alluded to in the press conference following the game, the players were amped to be back on the field.
Yeah, and you could see it. We have the highlights and more. Let's go ahead and check out the atmosphere last night as fans were back in the stands and players came running out of that tunnel once again in Tempe.
One of the biggest storylines was Emery Jones' ASU debut. We're going to head to the second quarter with NAU's botched snap on the field goal attempt. ASU gets the ball, capitalizes, Jones scores his first ever touchdown as a Sun Devil. There was a dog pile, but Jones got across the line, giving ASU the 10-0 lead. The Sun Devils also got it done on the defensive side with Kyle Soley's interception, and he is getting hype with his team. He hopes it's first of many interceptions for the linebackers. And Jones is going to now showcase his run game, dodging past the lumberjacks, and talks a lot of his speed and mobility and showcase that tonight. NAU got its only points of the night on this field goal, putting up 3. And now in the third quarter, freshman Carter Brown made an impressive debut, only a freshman, going 4 for 4 on the night. And Sun Devil Nation, they were on their feet. It was a hot one out there, but they were excited to see their team back at Sun Devil Stadium. Sparky also got a lot of exercise with all those points scored. ASU would end up winning 40-3 against NAU. And now head coach Herm Edwards with his thoughts.
Donnie did a good job of calling defense his first night, and I thought Glenn did a good job calling offense, what we were trying to get accomplished. We were pretty vanilla on defense, actually. Played a couple coverages, and that's what we did, and just get our guys. Because we got so many young guys in the secondary. And I thought, you know, for the most part, the thing we went into the game with is don't let them have any vertical passes.
Sun Devils out of the gate with a win, Ethan. Who stood out for you?
You know, I think you gotta highlight a player. If you have to highlight a player, it's gotta be Emery Jones, as he's just been doing a terrific job showing that versatility and his ability to lead the offense to the end zone on multiple occasions, not to mention 13 for 18 with 152 yards in a pair of rushing touchdowns. Not too bad for his first time in cleats at Sun Devil Stadium, and you saw those highlights earlier. If Jones can continue to build that chemistry with the team and stay healthy, ASU will just be that much better off. But Sammy, who caught your eye?
For me, it was Xavion Valladay. There may be no more important answer for the ASU coaching staff to come up with than who will lead the way in the backfield. And after one game, it was Xavion Valladay. He had 15 efficient carries for 116 yards and 2 scores. After the departure of Rashad White's team-high 225 touches, the Sun Devils are in dire need of a go-to running back to lead their run-centric offense. I think they may have found it in X. Now let's take a step back and look at both the offense and the defense. To do so, we bring in our 2 football reporters, starting with Jonah Krell. Jonah?
Yeah, Sammy, considering the FCS opponent ASU was facing in NAU, the Sun Devil offense didn't have to be perfect, but it got the job done. Offensive coordinator Glenn Thomas showcased a versatile and complementary attack, with Emery Jones leading an up-tempo passing game mixed with quick strikes and play-action passes over the middle. He also showed his elusiveness in open space with the read option, rushing for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns. While the wide receivers didn't make a ton of plays, they didn't have to. Running backs Xavion Valladay and Daniel Ngata both averaged at least 6 yards a carry and were catapulted by a physical offensive line the Lumberjacks couldn't counter. The big boys created big holes and looked much cleaner than the penalty-riddled unit we saw last year. Yet, Herm Edwards wasn't too pleased with the offense settling for 3 field goals and less than 150 yards in the second half, noting the offensive unit is a work in progress. With so many new faces, Thomas kept it simple, and one can expect him to expand the playbook next week against Oklahoma State. Now over to Tia Reed on ASU's defense.
Thanks, Jonah. The story on defense was very similar. Defensive coordinator Donnie Henderson kept things pretty simple Thursday night, allowing the younger and newer players to adjust to the system and play fast. Transfer defensive backs Corey Bethley and Chris Edmonds reaped the benefits of this, as Bethley picked up 2 explosive tackles for losses, and Edmonds recorded his first interception in an ASU uniform. However, the simple defense didn't only help the newcomers. Despite only having 5 tackles each, linebackers Merlin Robertson and Kyle Soley seemed to be everywhere on the field. Both players came up big, making key stops, with Soley even coming away with the Sun Devils' first interception of the season. Although the defensive line struggled to apply pressure in the backfield, they accomplished their goal of stopping the run, holding NAU to 1 yard per carry with just 23 rushing yards on 23 attempts. Despite facing an underwhelming FCS team, the defense showed promise that the Sun Devils' hope will continue throughout the season. Back to you guys at the desk.
Yeah, that rush defense for the Sun Devils is no joke. Sammy, I'll tell you what, I spent some time last spring and this fall during fall camp kind of checking out the practices and the atmosphere, and the defensive line definitely brings the heat.
I think Coach Rodriguez really got his team and group ready, and they have a lot of veterans on their side, so I think that's going to help because there are a lot of newcomers on the offensive end.
Absolutely. The older guys can always help out, but right now let's go ahead and take a look at some of the penalty numbers as Kevin Malater is going to bring us in with a By the Numbers segment.
Thanks, guys. Just like last year, the Sun Devils kicked off their season with a lopsided win over an FCS opponent. And from a numbers standpoint, Herm Edwards' side was much more disciplined in this year's edition. ASU saw themselves penalized just 4 times for 35 yards on Thursday night, which is fewer than any game a season ago. And if you're looking at season openers only, last year saw the Sun Devils penalized 13 times for 135 yards. That 100-yard difference is something that Herm Edwards and his staff can build off of. But timing is still everything, as Arizona State had 2 pick sixes called back due to penalties. But their defense still held strong and got the win. But still, it's something that needs to be fixed before this team gets in the meat of their schedule, which kickstarts next week when the Sun Devils travel to Stillwater to take on Oklahoma State. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thanks, Kevin. After the Sun Devils take a trip down south against Oklahoma State, they will head back home the following week for their matchup against Eastern Michigan, and then will head into the Pac-12 play, hosting the number 7th ranked team in the nation, Utah. ASU will then take a trip to the City of Angels, taking on number 14 USC. Ethan, their schedule really doesn't get any easier from here.
Sharks in the studio. I repeat, Sharks are in the tank here. Riley Swenson and Jeffrey Hinkle join me in a debate that has become very popular in these past few weeks. The topic of discussion, will ASU be over or under 5.5 wins? Riley, I'll go ahead and let you kick it off for us.
Yeah, to answer, I think it's an over. I think they get to 6 wins at least. I think that's maybe the minimum they're going to get to. You look at the schedule, it kind of breaks up into 2 6-game seasons. So if they can just win 3 games in each part of that. We saw them last night in action against Northern Arizona, obviously a lesser opponent, but they look good. The offense needs to get the passing game going, but the defense should be solid all year, and I think that to answer that in short should be an over.
Yeah,
Jeffrey?
You know, I've got them at 5 wins. I've got them in the under. You know, they're not gonna go to 4 wins, but I think they're gonna hit a close under. Like you said, they're split it up into 2 6-game seasons, Riley. I mean, they did take the W against NAU. Eastern Michigan's probably gonna be another W, but the rest of those games in the first 6 are all toss-ups, or it looks like Arizona State's gonna be behind in the favorings.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the first 6, so Northern Arizona win. Next week they go to Oklahoma State, probably a loss. Oklahoma State right now is in the top 25 in the country. They look good. But then Eastern Michigan should be a win. Utah, USC, probably losses. Those teams, top of the Pac-12. Washington, I think that game, or Stanford, they're going to win one of those 2. Stanford comes in the following 6-game season. Colorado, you'd hope would be a win there. UCLA is the only one in that second 6-game stretch. I think they could run into some trouble, but they finished the year Washington State, Oregon State, Arizona, all winnable games. I think they could maybe even win 4 of the 6 in the second half, and I think that's where that gets them to 6, maybe even 7 wins.
Yeah, you know, you made a good point about Washington. Washington last year, it was a close game between the 2. It didn't seem like it was going to be a very close game, but Washington only pulled off a 5-point win. So it could be a lot closer than you're giving you're giving them credit for. They're looking to bounce back after that 5-point loss. They could come into Tempe this year and take advantage of the Sun Devils, who are going to face Utah and USC back-to-back. Those are projected to be 2 losses in a row, right? That you said. UW could look to come into Tempe and take a dub off of the Sun Devils that have been struggling against USC and Utah. So you said that about UW. They lost to Washington State last year, so Washington State's a sneaky good team when they want to be, and they lost to Oregon State last year too. That's 2 games in the back 6 games that could be toss-ups. So, they took the W against NAU, but other than that, all the rest of the games are toss-ups.
All right, that's the discussion. Guys, good job with the notes. They look great. Thanks for your time. And to give us an in-depth look at the Pac-12 as a whole, here's our Scott Sanduli with today's Impact.
Another year has come, and the Pac-12 is still yet to send a school to the college football playoffs since 2016. But after one hot summer out west, there's reason to believe that's about to change. The reigning conference champion Utah Utes ran the table late last season to claim glory in Las Vegas and bring much of that group back. Sophomore quarterback Cameron Rising showed out with his arm and feet to propel the Utes offense to heights not seen in Salt Lake City for years. While superstar linebacker Devin Lloyd is off to the NFL, the defense should still be the class of the conference, headlined by a fearsome defensive back duo in Clark Phillips and Cole Bishop, who defended 18 passes a year ago combined. If Tavion Thomas can pound another 1,000 yards at running back, Utah is just as dangerous as last year in the conference and playoff pictures. Elsewhere, USC has received a talent transfusion never before seen in the sport. Offensive mastermind and quarterback whisperer Lincoln Riley is in from Oklahoma as the new head coach, and coming with him is dual-threat gunslinger Caleb Williams, whose big freshman season has him high on the Heisman watch list. Replacing Drake London at receiver is 2021 Biletnikoff winner Jordan Addison. Addison's game-breaking speed and agility netted him 100 catches for 1,600 yards in his freshman season, and his potential seems unlimited in this offense. The ground game is also formidable, with Travis Dye and his 1,300 rushing yards for 16 touchdowns coming south from Oregon. If the defense can improve upon a stepping stone year, the sky's the limit for one of college football's most storied programs. Perennial Pac-12 power Oregon can't be forgotten either. New head coach Dan Lanning made the 2021 Georgia defense a championship one, and there's reason to believe he can do it here. Justin Flo and Noah Sewell might be the most talented linebacker tandem in the country and could be the next generational talents to come out of Eugene. With Auburn transfer Bo Nixon at quarterback, this team has the experience and leadership to surprise a lot of people. For Cronkite Sports, I'm Scott Sanduli.
Thanks for the breakdown, Scott. Opening night of a football season at Sun Devil Stadium is always an occasion, but one could argue the real headline was written earlier in the day at a different Sun Devil stadium. That's Sun Devil Soccer Stadium, where Nicole Douglas inked her name in the pages of Arizona State sports history. Let's go ahead and rewind to yesterday's matchup as UAB met ASU on the pitch. You can see Nicole Douglas just before the game saying just 2 more to get that record from Tulloch as she rounds her way around the goalkeeper and has a nice left foot finish. Just 5 minutes into the match, Nicole Douglas has already tied the record, and it's a 1-0 game. Later on, Olivia Wynn in the box gets thrown to the ground. You'd think it'd be a penalty kick, but instead it's going to be a free kick. The referee moves it outside, said it occurred outside the penalty box, but ball don't lie as the Sun Devils able to net another goal there. Just a terrific finish as the Sun Devils continue to take it to UAB. Later on, Olivia Wynn to Douglas. Douglas with the header finish. She's got the record, but wait, not quite. It's going to be called back. She was offside. That record would have to wait a little longer. Here she is once again with the ball, cuts it inside, makes a nice move, and that bottom right quarter finish is going to be all she wrote, as now the all-time leading ASU scorer in soccer history is Nicole Douglas. She's got 51 career goals as the Sun Devils just continue to take it to UAB in this one. They improved to 2-0-2 as they take down the Dragons 6-2. Here's Nicole Douglas.
Breaking this record is just dedicated to my teammates, my family, my friends, my coaches, my nan, my dad, everybody who supported me on this journey. Coming in as a freshman at 18 years old, I never thought this would be possible, never thought about breaking records, and to hold that record now is just an unbelievable feeling, speechless.
Nicole Douglas finds that 51st goal of her collegiate career and surpasses the previous record of 50 set by ASU Hall of Famer Stacey Tulloch. To bring a closer look at Douglas and her accomplishments, we bring in WCSN soccer reporter Ryan Sikora.
Thank you, Ethan. With those 2 goals yesterday, Nicole Douglas now sits at the top of a list she's been trying to climb for the better part of the last 5 years. The 5th-year forward from London, England, arrived in Tempe ahead of the 2018 season as a talented teenager from Chelsea's highly regarded academy. And 5 years on from her first day in the Valley, Douglas finds herself as the highest scorer in Arizona State history with 51 goals, with 5 of those goals coming in just 4 games so far this season. Douglas also added a nation's leading 19 goals a season ago, and the Sun Devils number 9 is now the 2nd highest point total getter in the school history with 121, only trailing the legendary Stacey Tulloch at 125. Douglas has won an astounding 37 games in her time in Tempe, something she's all but said she's the most proud of, as she closes out her career in her collegiate final season. She's breaking records and scoring goals, but you'd have to think she'd trade it all in for a tournament berth come November. Ethan?
Let's take a look at the upcoming schedule for the Sun Devils, as they've got Georgia Southern, Pepperdine, and Grambling State. A lot of these teams just beginning their season, so there's a long ways to go in this soccer season. We're just getting started. Cronkite Sports and Cronkite Sports Live is going to have all that coverage regarding soccer, so make sure to head over to the website, cronkitesports.com, for all that soccer coverage.
Nicole Douglas will definitely be the player to watch on Sunday. But speaking of teams with a lot of hype and noise, ASU Volleyball is back in action, and I'm here with Kellen Croxton, our volleyball reporter. Now, Kellen, this ASU team, they have that veteran returning core, Marta Levinska, Amon Asanovic, Claire Jeter. So they have those pieces, but they also have a lot of new pieces as well. How's their offense changed so far?
Yeah, well, I'd say their offense has changed in multiple ways, and probably the primary way is just because of Jelly Sear's emergence, and she kind of started to play a lot more at the end of last season. And as a sophomore, she started to become one of the best players on the offense. And so being able to take the load off of Marta Levinska and Imani Sanovic, like you said, and also having key role players in some of the new acquisitions that they had is kind of diversifying this offense. It's making it more fluid, and we're even seeing as a result substitutions and everything. Everything's going a lot more fluid. Substitutions are working a lot better, and you're seeing that these sets aren't forced to Iman or Marta. It's the ball's going to where it needs to go instead of forcing it to one of your best players.
The Sun Devils also brought in some talented newcomers. We have freshman opposite Leah Miller and also Kansas State transfer Jaden Ravensburg, and they've made an impact so far. How do you think they will continue to make impact all season long?
Yeah, I mean, starting off with Jaden, I mean, she made a fantastic impact so far. I mean, she was able to win out the starting job as a sophomore over senior Annika Larson, and so Annika played very well last season, so for her to win it as a sophomore shows that she belongs on this team. And then you look at her stats last season, see that her highest career digs last season was 5 in a match, and then she hasn't had a single match with less than 12 so far this season. So you're seeing her also fit extremely well into how this team is playing. And you talked about Leah Miller, and Leah Miller's already emerged as kind of a really good role player on the offense, and she's been able to get good blocks, good hits, and just kind of add to more of that diversity and that fluidity for that offense.
I know it's early on. They only have 4 games under their belt, but what can Sun Devils expect for them this season?
Well, I think they can definitely expect an improvement. You know, the team's a lot younger, and so it's not going to necessarily mean that they're going to make a deep run or be able to go very far or even get to the tournament this season. But we're seeing a lot of improvement, and whether it's this year or a few years down the line, I think as soon as these freshmen and sophomores become, you know, grow a little bit more and become juniors and seniors, that we're going to see this team become really good.
Well, thank you so much, Kellen, for coming in and sharing your great insight. Now let's go ahead and take a look at their monster road trip ahead for these Sun Devils. This morning, they played Dayton at Georgia Tech Invitational and completed their 2nd reverse sweep already this season, winning 3-2. And senior outside hitter Amon Asanovic hit a big milestone today, reaching 1,000 career kills. In just a few hours, ASU will take on Florida International and then the 5th-ranked team in the country, Georgia Tech, on Saturday. Next weekend, they will head to Waco, Texas for the Baylor Invitational, then go to Lubbock, Texas to play in the Red Razor Classic that following week. They will remain on the road to face their rivals, the Arizona Wildcats, to kick off Pac-12 play on September 21st.
This offseason didn't just hit the football team hard, it brought coaching turnover to a variety of different ASU athletics, including women's basketball, softball, and lacrosse, just to name a few. We welcome Henry Dominy to introduce us to some of ASU's newest coaches.
Fans of ASU athletics will know that this summer and offseason has been a constant time of turnover for the coaching staff. It started in March when women's basketball coach Charlie Turner-Thorne announced her retirement. It was followed in June after a stellar season for ASU softball, which they played host to a regional and super regional, and head coach Tricia Ford announced that she was leaving for Texas A&M. Quickly after that, Sun Devil lacrosse coach Tim McCormick announced he was leaving for the East Coast lacrosse powerhouse of Johns Hopkins. And after ASU track and field performed well at the NCAA championships, cross-country coach Patrick Henner announced that he was joining the Georgia Bulldogs' blossoming track and field program. Finally, to start August, legendary ASU throws coach Brian Bluetrike announced he was heading for the track and field powerhouse of Oregon. All of this means that there are new faces coaching for ASU athletics. Taking over for the women's basketball team, Natasha Adair, the former coach of Delaware, has some big shoes to fill following the winningest coach in ASU women's basketball history. Megan Bartlett, an assistant from the University of Texas, looks to keep up the softball team's success. Coming from the University of Florida, where she was an assistant, Taryn Van Thoff has to follow up two-time Pac-12 Coach of the Year Tim McCormick, who led ASU to their highest conference finish in 2022. Ryan Godfrey comes from Kansas State and will be the fourth coach in 5 years for the ASU cross-country team, which had 2 athletes qualify for the NCAA championships during the track season. Coming back to ASU after winning 6 NCAA titles as an athlete, Ryan Whiting looks to keep ASU throws on top with his great experience.
Changes, changes, and more changes. That seems to be the only constant in college sports currently. The transfer portal and record-breaking NIL deals with schools bolstering collectives backed by millions of dollars to recruit the best. College sports might as well be on Mars right now. There's just one problem for the Pac-12 schools. It's not an even playing field. The conference's TV revenue is tens of millions behind compared to their Power 5 counterparts. The mass majority of college football fans think the Pac-12 is hardly even relevant anymore. The cherry on top, 2 of the major players in the Pac-12 are splitting for the Big Ten, USC and UCLA. I mean, can you blame them? On the gridiron, the conference hasn't been a true championship contender for a little over a decade. Olympic sports is a different story, but that just doesn't bring the same money. We all know that. Another thing we know is that as of September 2nd, 2022, the Pac-12 is still 12. That's 11 different opponents that ASU will see this year. While we're talking about facts, here's another one. Cronkite Sports will cover them. Past that, let fate decide where the Pac-12 ends up, and that's the way it is.
And now it's time for some top plays. At number 3, we have some ASU soccer. ASU put 6 past UAB on Thursday. Let's fast forward to see how the scoring finished. The final goal of the game came from a pile driver by Alexia Delgado. She was so happy with her teammates.
Let's take a look at clip number 2. Martinez, the quarterback for NAU, drops back to pass on a night he would want to forget. This was the second interception he threw as Chris Edmonds able to make that quick reaction from that play right in front of him. He grabs the ball and he's going the other way with his teammates. Martinez only threw 2 interceptions last year, 2 in last night's game, Sammy.
That's a stat to remember, Ethan, but how about a day to remember? Here's Lucy Johnson again with the assist. Nicole Douglas is able to roll off her defender, then shimmies past another before slotting it home for her ASU record-breaking 51st goal of her Sun Devil career. With that goal, she surpasses ASU legend Stacey Tulloch, and what a day for Douglas. Thank you all for coming in and joining us for this first edition of Cronkite Sports Live. I hope you all have a great rest of your week.